In our next unit, we are going to look at solving equations. And in this lesson, we'll look at solving two-step equations. But first, let's review how to solve a one-step equation. So remember, to solve an equation, you're going to use the inverse operation to get the variable alone. So we'll just look at 4 examples of one-step equations. In number 1, we have x minus 3 equals negative 8. So if I want to get x by itself, and there's a minus 3 there, well, the opposite of subtracting a 3 would be to add 3. And remember, with equations, you have to keep them balanced. We have to add 3 to the other side of the equal sign too. So negative 3 plus 3 is 0. Those cancel out. I'm left with x equals, and negative 8 plus 3 is negative 5. If I wanted to, I could check my answer. We would substitute negative 5 in for x, and I'd have negative 5 minus 3 equals negative 8. Negative 5 minus 3 is negative 8, and that does equal negative 8. So my solution checks. Okay, number 2, g plus 7 equals 11. So opposite of adding 7 is to subtract 7. So g equals 4. In number 3, we have a fraction, and it's being multiplied. It says 3/4 times x equals 9. So the inverse of multiplying is to divide. However, since it's a fraction, dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by its reciprocal. So let's make 9 a fraction, and I'm going to multiply by 4/3. So on the left, any fraction times its inverse is 1. So we're left with x. On the right, we can reduce. 3 divides into itself once, and into 9 3 times. And then multiply straight across. 3 times 4 is 12. And if you want to check that, if you took 3/4 of 12, you would get 9. Okay, number 4, negative 8n equals negative 64. So inverse of multiplying is to divide. N equals positive 8. So solving two-step equations, very similar to solving one step, just that there's going to be a second step. So in number 5, we have 2n minus 5 equals 7. And we always want to add or subtract first and then multiply or divide to get our variable by itself. So figure we want to get 2n alone. My first step is going to be to add 5 to both sides. And I'm left with 2n equals 12. To get n alone, let's divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is positive 6. In number 6, same idea, just the variable is on the right-hand side. So to get 2y alone, let's add 3. 7 plus 3 is 10 equals 2y. And to solve for y, divide by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And we just have a 1y. It's good to keep your variable on the same side it starts on, just so you don't mix up any signs, any positive or negatives. Okay, in number 7, that's x divided by 9 minus 15 equals 12. So first step is we're going to add 15. So then we're left with x divided by 9 equals 27. Opposite of dividing is to multiply. So let's multiply both sides by 9. On the left, the 9's divide out. And then x equals 243. Okay, and number 8. So we want to get the negative 3x alone. So add 9 first. Negative 12 plus 9, negative 3, which is equal to a negative 3x. And then divide by negative 3. Negative 3 divided by itself, positive 1. These last two are a little tricky, however, we can simplify first to make it easier for ourselves. In number 9, we can get rid of the decimals by multiplying everything by 10. When you multiply by powers of 10, it just moves the decimal point to the right. And since we only need to move it one place to the right, that's why we multiply by 10 and not by like 100 or something. So 0.4f times 10 is just 4f. 9.2 times 10 is 92. And 10 times 10 is 100. And then we can solve this equation like we did on the last few. So I'm going to subtract 92. I'm left with 4f equals 8. And then divide both sides by 4. So f equals 2. So it's probably a lot easier solving it that way than having to worry about decimals. Okay, and in number 10, more than one way we could solve this. We could solve it as a proportion, or we could get rid of the fraction first. So if I want to get rid of the fraction, I'm going to multiply both sides by -4, because that's what I'm dividing by. So -4's cancel on the left. We're left with a minus 10 equals -8. Then add 10 to both sides. A equals 2. Okay, our last problem is a word problem. It says write an equation, then solve. A music store sells a used guitar for $120. This is $25 more than half the cost of a new guitar of the same brand. What is the cost of the new guitar? All right, so we have some review of vocab here, right? We see more than half the cost of a new guitar, or I should say $25 more than. Remember, more than means we're going to be adding, and then of means multiplication. So anytime we want to solve a word problem, we're going to write an equation, we first want to define a variable. So what we don't know is the cost of a new guitar. So I'm going to use N to represent the cost of a new guitar. Okay, and we know that 1/2 the cost of a new guitar, and we want to do more than $25, is going to be the cost of a used guitar, or $120. So that's our equation we're going to solve. So just like before, I'm going to get n by itself, so let's subtract 25. So 1/2 n equals 95. Then we can divide by 1/2 or multiply by its reciprocal, which is 2. 95 times 2 is 190. So since this is a word problem, we want to leave our answer in a sentence. So we can say, a new guitar costs $190.